What's up, guys, and welcome to another Underdog Playoff Best Ball show. I'm joined today by Spread Astaire, and he has a team that nobody's talking about that is easy to stack, and you can get them super late in these drafts, and we'll talk about it after this. There is a ton of value in current Underdog Playoff Best Ball ADP. Elite offenses like the Bills are easy to stack. Take advantage of uncertainty and start drafting now. Use the promo code SEEK for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And subscribe to Heat Seeker Sports on YouTube for Underdog strategy and drafting shows. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you are watching the Underdog Playoff Best Ball show. I'm joined today by Spread Astaire. Spread and I are going to be reviewing basically a lot of the value that you can find in the playoff scenarios right now and how that might play in as far as ADP and when you're drafting your playoff best ball teams and teams to target for that value, and just teams that have the best path to making it to the Super Bowl and some sneaky teams that might make it into the Super Bowl. But Spread, how's it going, man? How was your Christmas?
Oh, it was great, and I'm excited to do this show today. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of the bets we're placing this week. I talked to you beforehand, right? You can take a stand on the Chiefs and the Bengals, and that's going to decide how you draft. So more than ever, I feel qualified to help, Simon, because we're here and we got to figure out who's going to win these last 2 weeks in order to draft the proper teams. And this season has been so exciting. And this playoff best ball kind of gives us a second chance to dive right in those waters. And I can't wait to see what players we land on.
Yeah, for sure. And I couldn't think of a better guy to get on the show for a situation like this than a betting expert like Spread, because a lot of this is going to come down to who you think are going to win these games in the last couple weeks, and we're going to be looking at playoff odds and stuff like that. So perfect guy to have on with Spread. So before we dive in here, make sure to hit like on the video. Going to be looking for 15 likes, and I'll put out a shorter video with maybe some focus on specific playoff teams to target, and then hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I am at 265, I believe, so I'm only 35 away from that 300 goal. I want to get there before the NFL season finishes, and we got plenty of playoff content to put up, so no lack of content once the season ends. So we'll have plenty of content coming back up, and especially this Underdog Playoff Best Ball stuff. And this is probably my favorite game to play. And I'm doing a special with Underdog right now, where if you use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, that is going to get you a $100 match, up to $100 on your first deposit for new Underdog accounts. So make sure to use the promo code SEEK. It's on the bottom of the screen. You can see right there. And you're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And on top of that, if you send me a message, if you hit that SEEK and you get that $100 match, send me a message on Twitter at Pumacom, and I'm going to send you my rankings for the playoff best ball, so that you're using a good guide for drafting these teams and figuring out where the value is. So Spread, now that we're into this scenario situation, let's take a look at some of the odds for some of these teams that are going into the playoffs. Give me 1 second here while I call it up. Let's see. Going to look at the New York Times playoff odds here. So there are some teams that have clinched already. We do have a decent amount of teams that have already clinched. We have some teams that are on the bubble, and it's just a really like a cluster of teams in the AFC in particular. We got all these 8 and 7 teams that are fighting for a playoff spot, and on top of that, we have like 9 and 6 Bills, which need to basically win out to kind of hold off some of these 8 and 7 teams. And you got the Chiefs at 9 and 6 too. But as far as the teams that have clinched already and the teams that you might want to target, at least in the majority of your drafts right now, while we're waiting for things to clarify, The Dolphins have clinched a playoff spot. The Ravens have clinched a playoff spot. The Eagles and Cowboys have both clinched. The Lions have clinched, and the 49ers have clinched already. But if we're looking at the guys that have the best chances of making the playoffs right now, as it stands, Buffalo has an 89% chance of winning, making it into the playoffs. We have the Browns with a 99% chance of making it into the playoffs. The Chiefs have a 98% chance of making it, and the Bucks have an 84% chance of making it. And then we have several teams in the 70% range, like the Jaguars. The Bills have that 89%. We have, the Seahawks are the other main team. They have a 69%, and the Rams have a 66% chance. So, Spread, out of those teams, which do you like the most as the team that you think can make it into the playoffs? And then which teams do you think can make the most noise as these teams that have not made the playoffs yet and have, maybe a little less of a chance to make it in?
All right. Before we move on to the more unique takes, I'd like to say I believe the Miami Dolphins are the top team you should target because you're going to get that explosive offense, but you're most likely not going to have the bye week. On the other side, we want to target the 49ers, but don't do what I did last year and have too many guys on a bye, and then you can't advance past the first round if you load up on players on the top teams. So, while 49ers players are going to be valuable, especially if you can advance, I think the Dolphins help you in that week one so much. Take a look at some of these odds here and how they can be affected. The Bills have a pretty high chance. And when I'm reading that, I'm assuming that this model that they use to get these playoffs, they're assuming that Miami's going to sit people in week 18 because you mentioned they do need to win out. And they are traveling down to Miami there in week 18. So that'll be interesting to see who starts there. I see the Bengals only are 19%. That's because right now the Cincinnati Bengals are plus 270. The Kansas City Chiefs are minus 320 to win that game. But we've seen the Chiefs had some problems. The Raiders were able to get the win in Kansas City this week. This is Patrick Mahomes' worst season as the starting quarterback. And this team is disjointed right now. So that's somewhere you can take a stand. When I'm looking at these odds, I'm looking at teams that I want to be able to make stands on that are going to kind of upset the apple cart. So if you have a strong feeling about the Bengals Chiefs, that gives you an opportunity here. And then, the Broncos only at 6%. But we talked right before we came on. If they decide to sit Russell Wilson in favor of Jared Stidham, that goes down even farther. On the other side here, the Eagles and the Cowboys are fun teams to target. I personally like the Lions a little more because we know we're going to get a home team for them. The Cowboys' home road splits have been terrible, and I'm thinking most likely right now the way it's going to end up, let me pull this up. Did I have this set up there? The Cowboys might be traveling in that round one. So I plugged in on the playoff predictor, Simon, and I simply went off the spreads. I used the spreads. So, if, the Baltimore Ravens are -4 on a total of 47, right? I put that in as, what would that be? 20, right around 26 to 21, 26 to 22, somewhere around there, right? And I put them all in with the spreads. If everything holds up, and we know that won't happen, right? Otherwise, everyone would be rich just betting all the favorites. But Dallas would travel to Tampa in their first round. I'd much rather have a Dallas team if I knew I was going to get some home games here, and it would require, if everything played out, it would require Seattle to upset Detroit. So an interesting spot here where the game that we targeted for our Best Ball finals, Detroit-Dallas, might end up being in the second round, but not indoors in Dallas, indoors in Detroit. So for that reason, boy, if you can get Dallas in that second round, closer to home atmosphere, I think that makes them a lot more appealing. Some other playoff predictions. I don't know. Did yours look like they're a little different than mine? Because you have the Rams going down there.
Yep.
Why don't you explain to me that real quick? Because I think this is a lot of fun. Because I had the Vikings, and those are two teams with potent offensive weapons that we look right. In Best Ball, Justin Jefferson went number 1. Cooper Kupp went 4 to 7 or 8 around the time. Puka Nacua was the breakout star of the season. Kyron Williams has been fantastic. And on the other side, even though they lost, Nick Mullins had 411 yards last week. We can't discount that. So once again, we take a stand, right? You could load up on Rams. I could load up on Vikings, and we're just going to see who's going to win out. Can you jump back to the New York Times one, and let's take a look at each one of those teams' percentages? Because I think these are some of the fun decisions that we're going to make. Right now, they only have the Vikings at 28%, and they have the Rams at 86%. So I can see why it feels like you're taking a safer route. But imagine if I take that stand with the Vikings, how much leverage I could possibly get with a really low-owned Justin Jefferson, right? A player like that, even a mini stack where I can get Mullins as a secondary QB. So take some stands here and just know some teams are going to be dead, but some of your teams are going to be so stacked in comparison because you're going to be able to get players that other the players you're competing against might be completely ignoring, right? For example, I might have a team full of Vikings, you might have a team full of Rams, and it's just we drafted well, but who's going to win these final 2 weeks?
Right. Yeah, and that's an important note by Spread. Like I've been drafting the Rams for the past couple weeks. Like when I started drafting them, their odds were much worse, but I was getting like good ADP on Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. So it was really easy to stack those guys. So I was able to take a team like San Francisco in those early rounds of the draft. And then I was able to kind of cloak them or get them an opportunity to advance to the second round by drafting the Rams, because the Rams were easy to stack. And they have a bunch of, like Spread said, a bunch of high-powered offensive weapons. And that is what you're looking for in these drafts. Like a strategy that you want to take when you're drafting these teams that are on first-round buys, like San Francisco and Baltimore potentially, is you want to make sure that you're getting good value later on in these drafts that have explosive upside. So the Vikings are a perfect example of what Spread said. If you think the Vikings can make it to the playoffs, they're going undrafted. They're going undrafted in these drafts. So if you have a heavy exposure to the Vikings in these early drafts and you believe that they're going to make it to the playoffs, that's going to set you up with some unique teams, because by the time the Vikings are kind of settled as a playoff team, their ADP is going to skyrocket. And you're not going to be able to build the same teams that you're able to build right now if you believe in those Vikings. Same with the Rams. With the Rams a couple weeks ago, I was getting a much better ADP on it. And now they have creeped up as their playoff odds have improved. So it's more difficult to stack that team. And we got a lot of teams like that, especially this year. I've never seen it this year where we have this many teams vying for the playoffs and so little settled at this point in the season. Week 17 is going to add a ton of clarity. But if you have some stands to take, like now is a good time to do it. And you do it by signing up for that Underdog account, make a deposit using the promo code SEEK, SEEK, and they're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I will provide you with my playoff projections or rankings. Just hit me up on Twitter. Let me know that you signed up, and I will shoot you over my projections. So, or my rankings. I shouldn't say projections, but Spread, what do you think out of these 8 and 7 teams? You like the Bengals? The situation with Russ is interesting for the Broncos as well, because like Spread said, they might bench Russell Wilson, so that basically takes the Broncos from 6-0. But yes,
I was thinking about that, Simon. Though, does it? At this point, how much worse is Stidham than Russ? It's not like
Yeah.
you're losing a Joe Burrow type player. I'd say that Russ has been average this season, right? And we use a baseball stat, but wins above replacement. I put Russ right about replacement level right now.
Replacement level. That makes sense.
Right in the middle. He's not terrible. He's not elite. He's an average quarterback. Now, we know Stidham is a slight downgrade, but I don't think they've been winning on the strength of the play of Russell Wilson, as they've turned things around this season. It's been the defense being opportunistic and creating turnovers. And in their recent slide, that's what's happened. The defense has failed to do turnovers. So these are just some of the fun things that we think about. Another contrarian way to get it. I'm sure everyone's going to flee from the Broncos.
Yeah.
They're another team, they can sneak in. And obviously, you have to be building a lot of teams to play some of these contrarian takes that I'm having, like Bengals and Broncos. But if you get in there, and it's going to be easy to advance out of your next pods, right? If you're one of the only guys with Jamar Chase. And the question on that Bengals team is defensive. So when we're looking at fantasy, I think it's much more likely the Bengals lose 38-35 if they were to make the playoffs than it is 17-14. So we're also targeting teams with hot offenses that may be struggling on the defensive end.
One thing with the Bengals too, I was reading an article about it this morning about their scenarios. I think their odds improved to like in the 90s if they win out both their games. If they beat the Chiefs and they win their Week 18 game, I think that their odds improve to around close to 90%. And that at that point they still need help, but they don't need nearly as much help as the situation right now. So they clinched the playoff spot with wins in week 17, 18, plus a Houston, Indy, or Pittsburgh loss of one game. One of those teams has to lose one game, and then Cincy has to win 17 and 18. So
the reason, if you're taking Cincy in the thing, it's the same as betting the money line this week against the Chiefs. Like I said earlier, they're plus 270 right now. Minus 320 there against Kansas City is really what's depressing those Bengals odds. If you were to just put this game in as an even game, a 50-50 coin flip, I think the Bengals are going to go up to high 30s, low 40s% on their playoff make. So that's where I'm saying you're going to have to really take, if you want to get different here, take some stands, choose some money line dogs, and then, hey, instead of me betting this plus 270 over here on my gambling site, I'm going to go ahead and play the money line by drafting a bunch of Bengals.
Yeah, and the Bengals obviously have that explosive upside with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even Jake Browning, and Joe Mixon and Chase Brown to an extent too. So that's a stacked offense with the ability to put up points and to potentially make some noise in the playoffs, especially given what we've seen towards the end of the season with that team, even with Burrow out. Like they've been surprising and they've had a lot of upsides. So
Simon, I have to ask you what you think about the Eagles. This is the team that if we were doing this preseason, I would think, we're going to be all over this team. Jalen Hurts is a fantasy monster, but I don't think Hurts is 100% healthy. And we've talked about this when we've done shows before during the season that he's not the same guy. And I don't believe that he's gotten worse. I think he's playing through an injury. And we've seen this before. And I talked about it yesterday when we were recapping what happened in week 16. Look at Baker Mayfield that last year in Cleveland. Nobody wanted to sign him because he dragged himself out there with an injury. And I don't want to discredit him, but I think that he did himself a disservice in the eyes of the public and NFL front offices by putting that bad play on tape. I feel that we're also getting that from Trevor Lawrence right now. I think that Trevor Lawrence is catching a lot of flack for his recent play, but I think he's dragging himself out there, and I think the organization would do him a favor to actually sit him for 2 weeks. But they're not going to do that. The final player that I feel really falls into that category where I feel is getting unfairly maligned by the media, where they're acting like he got worse as a player or he needed Shane Steichen as his coordinator to be effective, is Jalen Hurts, because I don't think his shoulder's there. I think he's beat up on the lower body, so he's not throwing as well. He's not moving as well, but I don't think he got worse as a player. I think he's just really beat up. So I would really like to know, how do you view the Eagles? Is this a team that you're going to target, or should we be concerned because health matters and this team hasn't been healthy on either side of the ball? They're continuing to play through it, but the stats and the results are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, I think they have a lot of underlying issues too. Like I don't believe in their coaching and stuff like that on top of it. But yeah, it hurts. His knee has been banged up. His shoulder has been banged up, and it's been showing in the results of like their offensive output. And in addition to that, their defense is really bad. So if the Eagles, they clinched a playoff spot already, they could be an easy out. A couple shows ago when I was, talking about the Rams and how I like the Rams, my projection was that the Rams would face the Eagles in round 1 of the playoffs and that the Rams would win that game. Because I think that the Rams have the coaching edge there. And I think the Rams are heating up at the right point in the season. And I think that the Rams would beat the Eagles if they faced them in week 1. And that's why I've been heavy on the Rams right now. With the Eagles, I do think that they could also, get it together. Like when the playoff intensity hits them, I think they could definitely, like find their way in that situation. But I don't believe in the coaching staff. I've been saying it all season that I don't think it's a good coaching staff. I don't like the head coach. And I mean, you've seen it throughout the season. Like the guy just makes a fool out of himself. And, he has difficulty, adjusting. And their defense is a perfect example because their defense is just so bad. Like they are one of the worst defenses in the league, especially in terms of, fantasy points scored against. But the offense was always kind of holding up the team. But now that, like Spread said, Jalen Hurts is hurt, and it is showing in their offensive output too, and they're losing some easy games. So, I shouldn't say easy games, but games that they should win, with little difficulty. You know what I mean? So I think that the Eagles, I don't hate drafting them just based on their value, because it was very difficult to stack Hurts and Brown in the past with these playoff best ball. But now you're able to stack Hurts and Brown and basically the entire Eagles team. I think when you're able to do that, you do it when you can, but you don't go heavy on it. You do enough to cover a scenario where you think that the Eagles could advance. And usually that happens when you're pick 5 or 6 or something like that. And it's, you're kind of out of those high upside 49ers and, Tyreek's gone and CeeDee Lamb's gone, stuff like that. And you're kind of left with Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, or you got to go down a tier. Those are the situations where I'm kind of taking the Eagles and just rolling the dice on that stack. But I do think that the Rams, if they play the Eagles in week 1, I think the Rams have a really good shot of upsetting the Eagles and knocking them out early in the playoffs.
We talked about taking stands on teams that we are high on. And I was kind of leading into it with the Eagles because I kind of had an idea you weren't going to be too high on them. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that it's safe, especially if you're not just flooding the entry board, to just fade teams too? For example, we just talked about the problems with the Eagles team. We talked about their right for an upset in round 1. If you completely fade this team and it happens and, they lose 31-10 in the first round, that gives you a leg up. So the reason I illustrate this is I feel when we're drafting today on December 27th and we don't know this playoff picture, there's 2 strategies we want to employ to kind of give us a leg up on the field rather than waiting to actually know, because I'm sure a lot of people will not draft until after week 18 is completed and we know the seeding. So the two things that we're doing is we're going to choose teams that we're high on, right? I'm saying, hey, I want to sneak some Vikings in there just because I feel like give me a huge leg up on the rest of the field. You've chosen the Rams. I also think that we go through and we choose teams that we know are going to make the playoffs, right? You said the Eagles have 100%. But hey, let's circle some first round exits here for some of these higher teams. And that's another way that we can use the leverage of drafting early to go ahead and make better teams by simply skipping over other players of teams that we're not high on or we think could be particularly vulnerable. And we can argue during the offseason whether or not it's coaching or injuries that doom this team. But you and I are both down on this team. And I think that in this conversation we've illustrated the two ways to approach drafting early. This is where you can get your edge. You're going to try and find an undervalued team that might jump into the playoff picture and then search for teams that have already qualified that could be that potential first round exit.
Yeah. If I was looking, I think the Eagles they stand out to me as the first round exit. I think, the Lions are a potential first round exit. And I think the Cowboys, just the way that they play in the playoffs, and the Chiefs, there's a lot of potential first round exits, man. I think that this is going to be a year where you see a couple teams in the Super Bowl that we don't normally see or don't normally expect either. I think the Bills have a really good shot of making it to the Super Bowl this year, and they are one of the teams that I'm highest on. And I think that they have a really good shot because everybody is down on them right now. But this is the year where all the opponents that they face are at their weakest. The opponents that have stopped them in the past are at their weakest. I think if the Bills make the playoffs, they have a really good shot of just, playing with that extra motivation of knowing they're going to be playing as the underdogs throughout. So they're going to be like not caught off guard like maybe they have in the past, but like they're also going to be facing weakened opponents like the Chiefs. If the Bills smell blood in the water and they have to play the Chiefs in round one, I would take the Bills over the Chiefs in round one. I think the Bills overall are a better team. I think the Chiefs are lacking in their weapons beyond Travis Kelce that they can pass the ball to. And I think that has frustrated the hell out of Patrick Mahomes. And you've seen that in these past few weeks where the Chiefs are dropping these games. It's because the team sucks. Their offense sucks. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce aren't enough to will the team to victory. The defense is doing great. They're holding teams under 20 points, but the Chiefs can't score 20 points, So the Chiefs are an easy out in that first round, even playing at home. We've seen it in the past several weeks where they've dropped a couple games in Arrowhead. It's not that big of a mystique behind it when the team's offense can't put up points. But what do you think, Spread? Who are you looking at for potential week one outs?
I think you made a good point, and the Chiefs is one that I definitely was. The other thing is they're going to win on the strength of their defense if they do advance. Mm-hmm. So they might not be as attractive as a Detroit. I know you mentioned Detroit as a potential first-round exit, and I know that you and I had a little different on our NFL playoff predictions. I had Detroit playing Seattle in round one, and I said, Detroit's better than Seattle. Seattle beat them. Seattle beat them pretty easily in Detroit already this year. Maybe that's a pretty good matchup. So I agree with you on that one. I think a lot of people are going to agree with us on that Bills Chiefs. I don't know if fading the Chiefs is going to give us the leg up that we thought when we're going against other early drafters. But I definitely agree with that take. I just think it's going to be kind of a consensus take where I think both our Rams and Vikings stands we're really going to be separated. So you made great points there. I don't have much to add. I do want to kind of shift a little and ask you one more question. Yeah. I have, in my playoff predictor, I have the Cleveland Browns traveling to Jacksonville in round one. Yeah. Who would you like in that game?
Cleveland.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's
Cleveland.
another one. If I can even get 2 rounds out of Flacco and Njoku, Cooper, Jerome Ford shown himself to be viable, especially in this format where I don't need to choose to start him. I can just hope he explodes. That's another fun stand to take. And there might be another team, right, that pretty high on for fantasy all year. Jacksonville Jaguars that put up a lot of good numbers early.
Yeah.
Maybe you get away from them in the first round. And it goes back to what I was earlier saying, maybe we're fading these quarterbacks that we know are carrying injuries.
Yeah.
And the main 2 that come to mind are excuse me, I'm so sorry. Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and if you looked at that matchup between Cleveland and Jacksonville, like Jacksonville is giving up among the league most to the quarterback position as far as DraftKings points. I say DraftKings points. Obviously, we're in a different point scoring system with Underdog, but right now I have DraftKings in front of me. But they're allowing 22.2 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, which would set up Flacco to have a decent week 1. And they're giving up 30.9 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers and 15 points a game to tight ends. So that sets up Njoku to have a big game. It sets up Amari Cooper to potentially have a big game. So all these weapons that Cleveland has would have this great matchup against Jacksonville. And meanwhile, on the other side, Cleveland is only giving up 13 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. They're only giving up like 9 points a game to wideouts and 7 points a game to tight ends. So that's really bad matchups for all of the best players on Jacksonville, which sets up Jacksonville for an upset loss at home. If they're in that situation, Jacksonville still has to win the division. And that's very iffy right now with Houston and Indy both at the same record as them right now. I misspoke.
Related question: what have you heard about C.J. Stroud?
C.J. Stroud, I heard that he is practicing today, I think. So
he's back. I see. Do you want to scroll a little bit on the Jaguars percentage?
Yeah. Let me see.
Put that on the screen. What did they have for the Jaguars? I thought it was a little higher than I expected.
Yeah, the Jags are, Jags are at 74%. And
Houston's only at 34%. But if he comes back, that team is live.
Yeah, for sure. And Stroud is a guy that you can get at the end of drafts. So if you feel weak at the quarterback position by the time you get close to the end of the draft, CJ Stroud is sitting right there, for you to draft and make up for, maybe some of that quarterback points. Even if you expect them to get eliminated in the first round, at least you'll have a guy there to help you get to the second round. So I don't hate making those sacrifices sometimes where I see a high value guy towards the end of these drafts that I think, like, if I feel weak at a spot like a wide receiver or running back or something like that, then I don't mind taking a Rachaad White or a CJ Stroud or someone like that who is going really late in these drafts, have a high likelihood of getting eliminated in the first round, but can give you that upside that you need in the first round, like where you might be have a player with a bad matchup or have a player with a low projection or something like that, but you think that they'll do well and ultimately make it to the Super Bowl, but you got to get out of that first round, to make it to give your team that chance to stay alive in order to get to the Super Bowl. So there's a lot that you got to consider when you're doing these drafts, knowing you're going to sacrifice some upside. If you're willing to sacrifice week 1 by drafting those top seeded players that are going to get that bye in week 1, then you shouldn't be hesitant to draft a guy that you think can get you through week 1, but might be eliminated after week 1. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of strategy that's involved with playoff best ball. You just don't want to take too many of those players that you think are going to get eliminated in the first round of playoffs, because then you leave your team like dead. But you just got to be strategic with it.
I think it particularly applies to quarterbacks, as we've seen that quarterbacks can run up their statistics in a bad loss. For example, if Houston were to go down 28-3 going into the 6 minutes left in the third, Stroud's probably going to get a lot of easy pickups, right?
Yeah.
And so in this scenario, you're hoping to have, assuming the Ravens got the number 1 seed, right, a Lamar Jackson or a Brock Purdy on your squad. So you say, okay, Stroud's going to put up some numbers for me in that loss, and then I hope the Jackson or Purdy take me the rest of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of good, like plays and angles that you can take on these. Spread has it right on the money when you pick some of these teams that right now they don't look like they have the best odds. Like that, the Bengals is a perfect example. Right now, it looks like they only have 19% odds. But if they went out, then they jump to like 90%, and they need very little help to get in there. So yeah, taking stands on teams that you think could make it. If you like the Colts, like maybe you take the Colts as your team. Like they're all cheap. If you like the Texans, like we just talked about, they're all cheap. You got a lot of these cheap teams that are going like late round or undrafted simply because people can't envision them making the playoffs right now. But as we know with NFL, like once reality happens, then people start believing. They don't start believing before the reality happens. So you got to take advantage of that and try to find that value. Take some stands on the Rams, before they shoot up. Take some stands on the Seahawks, the guys like that. Seahawks are still dirt cheap. I've been drafting, like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, like in the last 2 rounds lately. So, I mean, it's just, there's a ton of value on these boards that people just don't, they either aren't realizing or they just are ignoring. So take advantage of that. And
so from what you're saying, can I infer that your strategy is to load up on the teams that are going to be hopefully in the championship in the Super Bowl in the early rounds, and then fill those in with potential first round busts with your later picks?
Yeah, that's been a strategy. I'm prioritizing the teams that I think can upset in the first round. Right. And then when I get to those very late rounds, if there's nothing on the board that I like for my stacks, then I'm focusing on, okay, I can make some sacrifices here. I don't want to draft, maybe necessarily, like Hardy on the freaking Bills to shore up my Bills stack. I would rather draft DK Metcalf because a lot of people are just focused on, just getting as many players on a team as they can, hoping it gets to the Super Bowl, and not realizing how much upside that they're sacrificing by doing that. Because if you get to the Super Bowl and you have Deontay Hardy on your team, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like you give yourself, like that high upside if he ends up hitting on the Super Bowl, but the odds of that happening are so low, and you're sacrificing a spot on your team that'll help you get through like the first round, when you could have put DK Metcalf on your team or something like that in the last round of the draft. That it makes sense to jam in as much guys as you can on the teams that you think are going to make it to the Super Bowl, but don't do it so that it's stupid and you're sacrificing upside in round 1.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So do we want to dive in and see how we do here on one of these drafts?
Yeah, let's jump into one. I'm going to jump into a gauntlet. Let's see. Let me just set up here. Let's see. Oh, and another advantage of these best ball drafts, playoff best ball, is you get paid out weekly as opposed to having to wait an entire season to get paid out. As your teams advance, you're going to get paid out for the value of that advancement. It'll change week to week. Like it'll go up a little bit as you advance to like the third round and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really really nice payout. And you have some really good prizes in the gauntlet. We're looking at 150K to first, 55K to third, 75K to second. You know, like, so there's some really big payouts if you can make it. If you can make it into the finals, then you're going to get a really good payout. So the objective is to, you know, make it to the finals, but also have as most complete team as you can when you make it to the finals. And in order to do that, I found the best strategy over the past couple of years has just been to pick an NFC team and to pick an AFC team that you think could face off against each other in the Super Bowl. Like 2 years ago, the teams that I picked were the Bengals and the 49ers. Bengals ended up making it to the Super Bowl. I had them very low owned, if I guess you could say, or like they were getting drafted at a really good value, but they were my favorite team to make it to the Super Bowl. So I loaded up on them and did really well that year. Got a team in like the top 20. I didn't hit the winner on that, but I got a top 20 team, which was a good payout. But yeah, if you can find one of these value teams and you just kind of lock in on them, then you can do very well if you end up hitting on them. So spread, I have it up right now. If you have it up too, we can click enter on the count of 3, maybe.
Yep.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, enter. All right. I got 2 more to start, so I think we're going to make it in the same one here. All right. So,
oh my gosh, hold on.
Uh-oh, what happened? Do I need to jump?
Can you jump
You need
out?
a bail?
Because I put an ad blocker on and now it's not letting me in.
No. Yeah, let me leave the draft. Here, I just
leave it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that happens on when you're trying to do it on a desktop sometimes. All right, let me.
Yeah, I just added it because I've been trying to use Roto Grinder.
Yeah.
And there's so many ads on there, but I feel like it's the best one.
Yeah.
For NBA news.
Oh yeah. Roto Grinders, like I worked there for several years. It's a top-notch team. I use their optimizer. Bob Gomes joins me on a lot of these shows. You've seen Dean on these shows and guys like that. And big fan of Roto Grinders and a big fan of their crew over there. And I know that the tools that they make as well, like with the optimizer and stuff like that, are top notch. I know the guys behind the scenes that do that stuff. So I definitely. I'm
in if you want to get one.
What's that?
I'm in here if you want. I'm in if you want to go for it now.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just jumped in.
Did you?
Looks like we're. Yeah, we should both be in the same one. All right.
We'll talk about your strategy real quick. I'm gonna go. I'll be right back.
Yep. All right. So let me just share this this tab here, and you can kind of see the setup here. It's only 6 players. There's only 6 people in these drafts. You can see spread is at number 6. I'm at number 4. So these are much smaller than regular best ball. And your goal in these is you want to draft. Let me get the rules up here. You want to make sure you have 1 quarterback, 2 wide receiver tight ends, 1 running back, and 1 flex. That's going to be your team. And then you got 5 bench spots. So you want to make the most out of that team. And that's where it comes into play, what I was talking about. You want to try to stack, maybe a NFC team with the AFC team. Maybe you want to stack, like a quarterback from the NFC along with a couple of his receivers with the running back of the AFC and maybe a couple receivers there. If you can, like, you just want to try to mix up a bunch of like these different little pods that you can get for these teams. And one thing that I like to do sometimes, if I have a quarterback, and okay, so you see here, Tyreek Hill fell to me at pick 4, which is great because Tyreek Hill is the guy that I want the most exposure to, because I think he has the most upside. I have Miami making it to the Super Bowl this year and facing off against San Francisco. I think that's, to me, the my favorite pairing in the Super Bowl, and I think the most, maybe not the most likely, but I think it's got a really good chance of getting there.
All right, I just jumped in. I started with Brock Purdy, and I'm going to go ahead and look. Oh my gosh, who do I want to pair him with?
Yeah, why Spread's doing that, just remember to hit Seek, sign up for an Underdog, hit the promo code SEEK, SEEK, enter that in as your promo code. They're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit, as long as you're a new account holder, and they'll match you up to $100. And hit me up if you do that, and I'll send you my rankings. So Spread, you went with
Jalen Hurts, but that was an auto draft. I was trying to get Kittle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have Tyreek so far. I'm gonna look here, and I'll probably, there's a lot of AFC guys on here, and I don't want to draft an AFC guy that is not a. So I'm gonna go with Kittle here, because like I said, Miami versus San Francisco is my projected Super Bowl. So I don't mind taking Kittle in that second round, just based on that. I drafted him a little bit earlier than his ADP, but ADP is kind of out the window when you're doing these drafts, because you're looking more to stack teams than you are to, like necessarily like just everybody has to be a value. You want to make sure you're stacking teams in this game. Someone just took Lamar Jackson. I don't have a ton of Lamar Jackson exposure. I haven't been grabbing him yet because I think he's a good value, even though people know that he's going to be a number 1 seed, or basically it's assumed. So I'm going to wait and start drafting my Ravens once we get closer to the playoffs starting. Like right now, I've kind of been holding off because I just think that there's a ton of other value that you can target. Like right now, I just grabbed Jalen Waddle. So I got Waddle, Hill, and Kittle as my start.
That's fantastic.
Coming up on Spread. Spread, what are you thinking for your next target here?
I'm probably going to go St. Brown and Mostert here. I'm going to just go the top 2 on the board, but that was kind of who I was targeting here. Mostert's been fantastic as far as picking up those rushing touchdowns. And, even though I know, Detroit could potentially lose that first round, I think it's going to be a high-scoring battle. And if they do win that first round, they could potentially be hosting Dallas in round 2. And that's another one that, maybe it's just built in my brain from the whole summer. But Dallas Cowboys and Detroit Lions matchup, I want to get a little bit of exposure to that game.
Yeah, I like that. I just took Devon A-Chain. Because I'm taking the opposite stance as Spread as far as that running back. He got Mostert, I got A-Chain. So I'm hoping that A-Chain at some point in the playoffs will have a decent week. But I'm gonna kind of have to target a value running back to kind of make up for A-Chain's potential to not have necessarily the same upside he would as the starter. But I want to get that Miami exposure, which is why I took him regardless of that. So we're coming up on my next pick. And right now I'm looking at Tua. I'm going to draft Tua and just kind of hopefully he'll fall to me and I'll be able to complete that Miami stack. If he does not fall to me, I'm going to have to kind of shift gears, and maybe I'll draft maybe I'll go with Dak and try to stack some Cowboys here. But I'm not a huge fan of the Cowboys, just based on just their history in the playoffs. Okay, Tua, I'm grabbing. I just don't just not high on the Cowboys. It's just it's kind of a gut thing, but yeah, the Cowboys, like I've always faded them in these playoff best balls, and it's never hurt me. Let's just put it that way. All right, Spread. What's going on in your head right now?
I'm going to grab Laporta and Cooper. Amari Cooper, that is, not Cooper Kupp.
Gotcha.
We talked about Cleveland potentially having that advantage matchup in the first round. If I can get 2 good games out of Cooper, that'll be worth it to me. And Laporta helped me with that the Detroit stack. So,
gotcha. All right, so I'm going with Cooper Kupp here because as I mentioned, I like the Rams this year. I think they can make some noise in the playoffs, and there's really no more 49ers for me to draft. So I'm going to try to draft some upside here, and that's why I'm taking some of these Rams now. I would have loved to get Kyron Williams, but he got drafted before I had an opportunity to get him. And somebody just took Nakua, so I'm not going to get an opportunity for that either. So it's going to leave me with a flat stack right there. But I don't hate drafting Kupp alone just because I think that they're going to upset the Eagles in that first round if they end up with that matchup.
Right.
So Spread, why don't you talk a little bit about your team?
Yeah. So I'm happy to get Purdy, but I was disappointed I didn't get Kittle to match him with. That was a mistake on my part. We'll see if it ends up working. I didn't default to the stack. The one thing is Hurts can get me through round 1 before turning things over to Purdy. So hopefully now he has a good game, although I don't know if I believe in it. I need to definitely target a running back here, as my wide receiver tight ends are St. Brown, Laporta, and Cooper, but I only have Mostert so far. Who with a win would not even be playing there on. They could potentially get the first round bye if they get that upset over Baltimore this week, and that's not the craziest idea. It could be a potential lit down spot from the Ravens coming off that big Christmas night win. It's a short week for the Ravens, and not only that, I believe that the coach McDaniels got a great opportunity to look at how the Ravens are going to defend against his system, because he gets this tape of the Niners. He runs the Shanahan system, right? He has his own wrinkles, but it's essentially a Shanahan system. So he is going to have a good idea of what the Ravens are going to do. I expect an excellent game plan here from Miami. So I need to be concerned, because even though right now it looks like Baltimore will be the number 1 seed, Miami is the top seed. Isn't that crazy? And Miami getting and I got lucky here because David Montgomery fell to me.
Yep.
And I didn't think he would. So I'm all in on Detroit for this build, and we'll see how that turns out. But it could, if I just get 2 good games out of them, I could be happy here. Now, finally, would I be crazy if I took Goff as well? Is that too many quarterbacks?
That would probably be too many quarterbacks. But who do you have for your quarterbacks? You have 2
Hurts
NFC.
And Purdy.
Yeah, if you got 2 NFC quarterbacks, I would probably draft an AFC one, or like Stafford, because it's right now you have all your flex, your skill position players are not synced up with your quarterback, so that would leave you in a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue here. So probably not the best showing for my team, but hey, Simon, we can learn what not to do by watching this video. Really misclicking on that Jalen Hurts hurt me here.
Yeah, that's.
And note to people out there, when you're watching, you go, "What is this guy doing?" He's not always doing it on purpose.
Yeah, Spread. He had a mistake at the top. He got the auto drafted, which happens. Like it's hard to do these and talk through your plays at the same time. But yeah, Spread just got kind of caught there. But normally he would not draft 2 quarterbacks in rounds 1 and 2.
Right. So I have one more turn left. Goff's still on the board. He might not get taken. Do most people usually go 2 quarterbacks here? Or is 3 common?
For the most part, it's kind of like up in the air what the best, strategy is as far as your what you want to do for your lineup construction. But I think one of the more popular ways to go is to draft 1 quarterback, draft 1 one or two running backs, and then just load up on those wide receiver tight ends. I think that's been the popular way to go. I like to draft at least two running backs, especially if I'm drafting a guy that I'm not positive on his upside, like A-Chain. I drafted Rashad White as a way to kind of give me a little bit more confidence in that week one. Even though Rashad White, I don't really necessarily think he's going to advance to round two, but he gives me at least some upside to help that team advance past round one. So I'm going to go with Demarcus Robinson here, just because with Robinson, and that gives me a match with Cooper Kupp. So I got basically Tua, A-Chain, Tyreek, and Waddle is my main stack. I want the Dolphins to make it to the Super Bowl, and I want them to either face off against Tampa Bay, San Francisco, or the Rams, and maybe I got the Seahawks in there too. But I'm just basically, I got my AFC stack, and right now I'm just picking off a bunch of these NFC players that could give me a full team if I were to advance to the Super Bowl and one of these NFC teams hit. So Matthew Stafford is there. I'm going to go ahead and draft Stafford because Tua, his upside is up and down. Like with Tua, you never know what his upside is going to be. He doesn't do well under pressure. So if he faces a team in week one that is a team that's able to generate a decent amount of pressure, then I want to have a guy like Matthew Stafford. Or that would have been a perfect example of where you can draft a CJ Stroud. I took Stafford just because I already have Cooper Kupp and Demarcus Robinson on this team, so it made sense to draft Stafford. If I did not have a guy that could complete a stack there, CJ Stroud would have made a lot of sense, and just kind of rolling the dice, hoping that Houston makes it to the playoffs, and that would give me that big upside that CJ Stroud has in round one to help me with my uncertainty over Tua and his upside. And then I got Rashad White to help me with my uncertainty over A-Chain's upside. And then from there, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. That's going to round out my Miami stack. And then I'm just hoping, like I said, like one of these NFC guys advances. Hopefully it's a Miami Rams Super Bowl this year. That would put me in the best position to get as many of these players through to the Super Bowl. But I have upside along the way in DK Metcalf, George Kittle, and Rashad White there. So, that's what I mean about kind of like you commit to the teams that you think are going to advance to the Super Bowl, and then you try to surround yourself with as much upside to get you to the Super Bowl. But keeping in mind that you want to try to advance a full team to the Super Bowl, and that means you want a quarterback, a running back, two wide receivers, and a flex. So you want to try to get that full team to the Super Bowl. So you got to make sure when you're drafting that you have those bases covered. Like if you're projecting either AFC or NFC team alone making it to the Super Bowl, like I would be short on one flex position with my Miami stack. I got Tua, I got the quarterback covered, the running back covered, and two of the wide receiver flexes covered, or wide receiver tight ends covered. I just don't have, like a Miami flex play. But I'm hoping that one of these NFC teams that I drafted would cover me on that flex. And that would either be Tampa Bay with Rashad White, it would be San Francisco with George Kittle, or it'd be the Rams with Cooper Kupp and Demarcus Robinson, or it'd be Seattle with DK Metcalf. So that shows you a little bit of what I'm trying to do when I'm drafting, is trying to, think about it as I'm going through, make sure I'm drafting enough players to make that full team in the Super Bowl and not sacrificing any upside.
All right. Well, we talked about taking stands, Simon, and this wasn't planned, but I ended up taking a stand here on the Cleveland Browns, as I ended up filling out the stack that way. I ended up with, so I have Njoku, Cooper, Ford, and Flacco all in there. And well, obviously this team isn't the strongest team and isn't ideal. In a contrarian world, if there's a chance if I advance past the pod, I could be, completely all alone and not worry about duping some of these, right? Because isn't that frustrating when you get to the second round and your top 2 players go off and you see 4 other people in the pod have them as well. So the advantage that I got there was doing that. But overall, I feel like my team's not correlated enough. So we'll see how it goes. But it's a great learning experience and just shows you don't draft 2 quarterbacks in a row.
Correlation is something too that you'll get more familiar with as you do more of these drafts. I would recommend trying to do as many of the drafts in the mitten, which is the $5 contest, before you jump into these gauntlets, because that's going to give you a feel for where guys are falling in the drafts and where ADP is taking you. And that'll give you a feel of the flow of these drafts. So, like you can skip this guy here and complete your stack there if you want to draft, team X, so it's just gives you a better idea of the flow of these drafts and where guys are landing and how you can complete your stacks. Practice on those $5 ones. And then when you're ready, you can jump into those $25 ones. And the good thing about that $100 match, if you use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, is you get $100 free from Underdog. You can enter 20 entries into that mitten, and that will give you those 20 entries up to $100. Make sure you make your first deposit up to $100 using the promo code SEEK. That'll give you that $100 match. And with the 20 entries into the mittens, that sets you up to enter 4 remaining picks of the $100 that you deposited into the gauntlets. So that gives you four shots of gauntlet drafts. And then you have a better idea based on ADP and stuff based on your mittens drafts. So it'll set you up nicely. And it's addictive too. Like Spread, once you start getting into this and once you start doing more of these drafts, like you're going to know the ADP so well, and you're going to know the draft so well that you're going to be thinking, okay, I want to do a Cleveland stack in this draft, but I want to make sure that I have, maybe a Miami stack in there, before I get to that point or something like that, so you'll just be able to calculate it like as you practice these drafts, and become a lot easier as you go along.
Definitely. So I feel like we gave out some great information to start the show on people to target. Mm-hmm. I just feel like I didn't implement it.
Oh yeah.
but that happens with the misclicks. As I click on Kittle right at the second, it's like, oh, I already hit it. So
it's all good. We'll get another one of these in here soon. Maybe next week when we have a idea of what the playoff picture is. Maybe we do like like one or two. Like I'll be doing about 2 or 3 of these a week. But yeah, Spread will be joining me when he can, and we'll make sure to give you guys a lot of good information, especially like Spread's betting knowledge. That'll come in huge when you're looking at this content and just getting his idea and his thoughts on the odds of teams getting in. He covered a lot of ground today, especially with some of these teams like the Bengals that I wasn't even thinking about, and guys like that make a lot of sense once you lay out their chances of making it in. So make sure to watch this content. Hit like on this, and I'll put out a shorter video if I get 15 likes. And then make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. And Spread, where can they find you after this?
At Spread Astaire on X/Twitter, and I'll be putting content out all week.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll check you next time. Or see you next time. Check you next time.